What's going on, champs and champettes? It's FireMonkey here, and before we even talk about the topic of today's YouTube video, which just to let you know right at the very start is going to be about games that I personally enjoy a lot now, that at launch, were terrible. The whole entire community was against them, and then as you go back to them years later, as the developers continue to put more and more love into their passion project, ended up becoming super fun games with super unique experiences that are way better than some of the other games releasing nowadays, and they still continue to get free DLC, free updates, and everything else that make their game even better than before. But firstly, I want to mention something to you guys. One thing that someone pointed out to me regarding my whole entire 3 YouTube channel thing I got going on, aka for those that don't know, I run 3 channels at once, is that really when it comes to how I do YouTube, I'm kind of the same person on all 3 channels, right? Because on this channel, I ramble on about whatever I want to ramble on about. On the Fortnite channel, I ramble on about Fortnite stuff. And then, of course, on my live channel, the FireMonkey live channel, I ramble on for an hour uncut about whatever I want to ramble on about while playing a video game. And to that person who pointed that out, you know what, you might be right, but just because you're right doesn't mean you're right, okay? Anyways, of course, that's just something that I noticed recently, and it's like, you know what, I'm kind of fine with that, because personally, when it comes to this channel, and just what I do on YouTube, I like knowing that what I'm making is content that I personally would have watched back. So knowing that the same type of content is being made on all 3 of my channels, just with a slight difference of, of course, like, oh, this channel is long videos, this channel is Fortnite related and stuff like that, I'm happy that, I'm in a spot where I enjoy the content there. Anyways, with that ramble out of the way, oh boy, fitting right into the channel's theme, huh? Let's go ahead and talk about the topic where, all the people who clicked on the video wanted to hear about, and then they just clicked off and, unsubscribed or something like that. So, a few games that I've really enjoyed recently in, like, 2021 and 2022 has been Cyberpunk 2077 and No Man's Sky. Now, both of these games had very interesting launches. For No Man's Sky, it was a launch where they had promised so much when the game first came out, right? It was like, oh, look at this thing, look at this thing. All of this crazy stuff's going to be available to you in the game, and then once the game officially launched, nothing really came of it, right? Because, like, this building system, right? Because I built this house over here with my base and everything, that was not there when the game launched. You were unable to build your own base. You just kind of had, the ability to walk around and go to different places in No Man's Sky, and the game got a lot of criticism due to that. Right? The game had a lot of people complaining about that. There was a lot of situations going on, and it was just something that was disappointing to see because it was something that they had kind of promised when the game first came out. And instead of them going ghost, right? Instead of them just completely leaving the internet forever, never updating the game or anything like that, just taking people's money and booking it, they stayed here. They continued updating the game, and with all the updates and everything, which are all free, by the way, I think that No Man's Sky is one of my favorite sandbox games ever. And I don't mean that as in, like, oh, this is my favorite game ever. It definitely is one of my favorites, but I mean it as in they had put so much effort into the game, they had updated it so much to where I have so much fun playing this game, and I always come back to it and spend hours upon hours playing it more and more and more and more, just messing around, just building my base, sometimes making a new save or whatever. And it's super nice to see that despite all of this, right, even with all of the bad news or whatever, their updates and stuff aren't paid DLC. Their updates to the game are all free additions that they've been doing for years now, and each one of them adds significant changes to it. I mean, the most recent one modernized the whole entire UI to look nicer, and while it did have a downside of removing one of the old features you were able to do before that I guess is kind of unintended, it did make the UI just look clean. It just made the game a lot nicer to look at visually, and I'm super excited to see that even with all the issues, right, they're continuing to update it, and they're the whole entire response a lot of people in the community have had about this game is no longer No Man's Sky garbage game, but now it's more like, oh, No Man's Sky, yeah, that's a pretty cool game, yeah, I love playing it every once in a while, and that is something that I love seeing, right? And I also love knowing that the developers had a passion to keep working on the game, even when the game was in one of its lowest spots, right? Even when everyone was basically, making jokes about the game or, just saying terrible stuff about it, because of course back then, the game was a shell of itself. It wasn't good at all. It was just something that existed, and it was something that people were disappointed with. So seeing that people are continuing to play the game, they're continuing to update it, is something that makes me super happy, and it allowed me to actually experience this wonderful game, basically. So that is something I just want to mention. And then similarly with Cyberpunk 2077, that was a game that, had a very interesting story, and that wasn't really one of the downsides was, missing features, but the downside downside was more on the fact that they were missing actual parts of their game. And what I mean by this is that there was tons of bugs, there was tons of like glitches or whatever that really hindered the experience and made something that should have been normal, right? You know, an experience that should have just been cyberpunk fun feel terrible. Like, there were situations where you could get soft locked just by trying to do a mission, and while those soft locks and stuff still exist to this day, they're a lot less common. The developers kept updating the game through the years. There's now an anime for the game, which isn't, you know, based on the game, but it's in the same universe. There's now a novel releasing soon, and there's now so much happening that I just sit there and it makes me happy to see, because when the game first came out, I didn't play it that much, not because I felt like it was a bad game or anything, but because the like community out there, people on Twitter and everywhere else, were talking about and making so many jokes about the game that didn't make me want to play it and experience what they had going on. Ooh, a free exosuit upgrade. Anyways, that is something that I'm excited to see, right? I'm excited to see that they're continuing to fix up their games, and the developers are still passionate enough to continue expanding on those worlds, and it's something that is honestly remarkable, because it feels like those games, right? The ones that had a terrible launch, no one really liked them, and it ended up having a smaller community because of it, but also ended up having a more polished game overall through free DLCs and all that type of stuff later down the line, ended up becoming better experiences than some of the games we currently have nowadays that are like AAA games, you know, stuff like that where you would actually spend a lot of money on cosmetics or whatever. Whereas here, if you want a cool looking cosmetic, you can get it through just playing the game normally, or get it through Twitch drops, right? Just watch people on Twitch play the game, have a stream open in the background or something, and you're done. You got yourself some free items, you're able to customize your face, swap it out, choose whatever colors you want, and you don't have to spend money on it, so your only cost is buying the game itself. But of course, I just kind of want to make a video, you know, ranting about it, and I kind of want to, oh, I just wasted some of my launch thruster, but I want to just make a video ranting about this whole entire thing, and just talking about how, you know, it's very nice to, like, it's just super cool to see that some of these games that had rocky launches and stuff, the developers were passionate enough to continue working on the game, and it caused for some super cool experience to be had, and some of my favorite games to be earned from it, where I'm invested in both the universes, and I want to continue coming back to the game year after year to play it. And, you know, even though they still have some issues here and there, they have their own quirks or whatever, they're still both Cyberpunk and No Man's Sky games that nowadays I kind of feel like I complained about them back in the day. You know, I over joked about them being terrible experiences or whatever, because they're honestly super fun, you know, with a clear lens of how it is nowadays. Sure, they weren't the best at launch. Sure, my criticisms at launch, you know, were valid or whatever, but here I'm like, maybe they weren't that bad, right? Maybe they weren't as bad as young FireMonkey was making them out to be, and maybe I should just, you know, think of a game like with a terrible launch as something that can get better if the developers are passionate enough to continue working on the game even after the issues and bumpy roads they've gone through. So let me know in the comments down below, are there any games out there that you've played recently or you've played in the past that when they first launched were terrible games, right? Games that you did not appreciate, you were kind of disappointed with, that ended up becoming wonderful games, games that you want to come back to all the time and continue playing. Because for me, as you could already tell, it's gotta be No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk 2077, and those are games that in my free time, I've spent so much time just messing around and having fun with. We also just completed a journey milestone, so that's really cool. And with that said, I'll see you champs and champions next time with another YouTube video, so peace out.